Okay, I'll also just check everyone can hear me so far, all right? No one's, yep, excellent. Thank you, Karen. Just get that chat bubble up so I can check on those and share my screen. And yeah, I guess instantly you get a bit of a, hang on, let's click the finish button. Grand reveal. Hopefully you're seeing the UniPhi application. Just double checking again if people can confirm they are seeing that. Excellent. Well, I'm using too many screens and Zoom acts totally different to Teams. That's excellent. All right, so it may not be obvious of a fairly major change to UniPhi in this screen. Those who are system administrators might be already seeing a change. The biggest user interface change in UniPhi 18 is the action buttons or action icons. And so in the previous version, these were square and text-based only. And so throughout the application now, you'll see action buttons are more visual. On hover, you'll still get the text, and occasionally you'll still get the text like you do here, where it's a little bit vague. And yeah, we'll be interested in early stage feedback about adding text to other icons, but it just cleaned up the application quite a lot. And on some use cases, it actually improved the workflow by enabling us to get more toolbar icons onto the screen. So to demonstrate that a little bit more, I'm just going to go to the documents module. And you can see again that you've now got some circular icons there rather than the yellow new that used to be. I'm just going to click on a document here, not that one, this one. And throughout this demonstration, what I'm going to try and do is just also highlight a few little features of UniPhi that probably aren't that widely aware of. We work very closely with all our customers. They all have unique requirements, and by fulfilling their requirements, there's little often don't get out into, sorry, just meeting some late coming. Into the marketplace. So I'm just going to subtly demonstrate some of those. So hopefully you've been reading my version of Johann Goethe's script in the current situation of that project management plan while I've been waffling on. You'll see across the top completely new icons here for the view document screen. That enabled us to bring back instant rendering to PDF and instant emailing. So it removed a couple of clicks in that process. Which was feedback we'd received when that changed some time ago. So finally got that fixed up for some people. I know a couple on the call wanted that. But equally within this screen, you can see I'm in version 2. This is the latest version of the document. If I was to revert back to just a view version 1, you'll see the icons have changed a little bit. There's no longer an edit icon. I can't edit version 1. But I can click this little psychedelic button here, which is actually track changes. And so I don't know how many people know about the track changes, but you can see if I click that, how I've turned Goethe's lovely first sentence into something a little bit less tasteful. And so I don't know, that works on any of the user controls as well. If you scroll down this screen, you'll see we've got risks. If they change, they would be underlined as well between versions. And so people can see, I'll just blow it up a little bit as well. What's changed? We only have changed one line in this particular example, but hopefully it's a slightly entertaining change. And so that's just one example of the things that maybe people aren't aware of, but equally the demonstration is a new interface with regards to icons and actions. And you'll see that right throughout the demonstration now as I go through it. One of the other things that have changed in UniPhi 18 is we've taken out the dashboard, the Power BI dashboard menu, and we've just called it dashboards and plonked it on the main screen. And so if I click on that now, it's quick access to those dashboards that you've built that you are embedded in your application. And so this is a little bit of a refresher on those. And what we've developed in those is now a suite of out-of-the-box dashboards that you can get into your application just to start thinking about it. Obviously, you're able to tailor those. Sorry. Yeah, you can tailor these, but we're just trying to give you as many different types of samples. And so this is the one that's been quite popular in the last 6 months with our client-side project management users. A 2-page PCG report covering a whole range of different things that you've painfully put into the system. In this particular screen, we've got milestones, we've got design and workplace health and safety issues, approvals coming up, contracts let, some risk and issued pies to keep us hungry at lunchtime, and some speedometer radar tracking on commitments and on spend in a financial year, plus a profile of cash flow. So you can actually get these on your deployment if you think they're valid. If you want to know what other ones there are, we can give you a side presentation on that. So the sample reports, you'll see, again, the change in UniPhi 18, the navigation structure for these are now down the side. They were at the bottom. So each page is now on the side here. And this one here is for our project controls deployments that have been a huge consumption of our effort in the last 12 months. Not many of those guys on the call, unfortunately, but I think that's because we give them so much attention during the year anyway. So again, you've got different reports here within the one sub-navigation. And this is tracking project controls earned value, mainly on infrastructure projects. This one here, the package summary, is my favorite, where you can get some really good earned value information with some drill through. So these are out of the box reports that we can deploy. If you're wanting to know what other ones are, talk to the account manager to get a more detailed demonstration. So I mentioned that is like, and yes, you can develop your own. So good question. This is the same report in Power BI Desktop. There's online resources for that. I'm going to show a little bit of this in the demonstration anyway, but this is actually the file that is used with all of the connections to the API data here that enables us to build these particular reports, and end users are able to do that, which more and more are getting familiar with this. You will need some support, but it is definitely a doable thing. So now what I'm going to do is show you most of the rest of the demonstration is, there are some more on reports later, but streamlining information and the sorts of information that people are starting to capture in UniPhi. So if I go back into the UniPhi application, so that was in Power BI Desktop. It was a little bit confusing because they look the same, but we then publish these into our clients' dashboards here. And if I go to the summary screen and sorry, I'm going to go to the time module now. So the time module came in UniPhi 17. It's had lots of enhancements in the last 12 months. And one is the ability to upload a P6 schedule. So again, a project controls feature. This will be the last one on those. I decided to trim down the focus on that as they didn't show up. But you'll see here I'm in all projects. And so I'm getting that pipeline Gantt chart of all of the different projects that exist in this particular portfolio. And I can go to this map WBS after I've imported a P6 XML file. So go into P6, extract the data to XML. There's a file save as function in there for that. And then upload that file into UniPhi, and then this little sub-navigation appears. And there'll be an XML selection there for you to select. And it'll have a status date and a level filter that represents the WBS of that particular P6 schedule. I've done that before this session in planning to select those. So the filter is now displayed with the 4 levels of WBS. And then what you're able to do is map to either a project or a life cycle for the dates to update. But what's additionally included in this is the earned value % complete as well. So people can come in and map. And so some of our standalone deployments, like for Sydney Metro, Melbourne Metro, Inland Rail, Warringah Freeway, et cetera, they'll have our setup as tasks rather than projects potentially. And so these will be activities, and they will be mapping their P6 schedule to the activities. And if I type twin, for example, twin bridges, that will update now the progress within that project in the milestones of that project with 100% complete. That is then what drives that activity dashboard I showed you a moment ago with the earned value information. And so going into P6, updating it in there, uploading it into UniPhi, it instantly updates the portfolio. We have all the actuals information. We have the plan, the resource plan, and the baseline. So then you get all of your own value statistics out of that. So that's just, massively improved their life. You can imagine with 20,000 activities to update. They've already done it in P6. Why do I need to do it again? That's pretty much what we were advised. In far more pleasant terms, you can imagine. Okay, so the next piece I'm going to show, I know someone on the call really wanted this, and it was a bit of a really crazy thing that it wasn't there. So in the UniPhi 18 release, what's been popular now for a couple of releases is the ability to create projects or update project metadata via copy-paste. And so you can see that the button's changed now. The import button is this symbol that'll be consistent across the site, and there's lots of import capability, which you'll see in this demonstration. When I click that button, you'll see that there's a paste from Excel screen here. And I've got an Excel spreadsheet that I'm just going to bring in. And you can see here, this could come from anywhere. This has been exported from UniPhi to import back in, which isn't a bad way to update sectors and project types if you redo those. You can export from UniPhi, update it in Excel with easier copy paste, and then copy paste it back in, and it'll update based off the project ID. But if I just highlight this particular range and come back to the UniPhi application, paste it into here. The key difference between file upload Excel integration and copy paste is that copy paste allows you to map the fields. So if there's extra fields that are superfluous, you can just ignore them. But what you'll see that wasn't available until UniPhi 18 is the ability to map a parent. It might seem not that big a deal, but when you consider that some projects are 40,000 activities with 150 parents, you'd have to go into those 48,000 activities to manually map the parent. It was quite a crucial improvement to that. So by mapping that, what that means is that that parent-child relationship that you'll see here with the Gladstone Ashford overlay has 2 children. The Hanger Lane has 2 children. You can manage that through the copy-paste. You then got the little validate button down here. That validates all the information for you, tells you if there's any errors. And then if you hover on that, it'll give you the validation error that's come out of that. Which you can then go and fix, but 73 rows validated successfully. You could just save that and import them in, or update, depending on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to create new projects or update, or both. And there's a whole heap of things you can do with that copy paste, which has been around for a while, but worth checking out, including updating budgets, updating roles, updating custom field information, etc. Okay, so now where we're going to go is into timesheet and resource planning. So as I mentioned, a lot of project controls work, which is about capturing effort estimates into the future, capturing time against those effort estimates from an actual perspective in our timesheets module, and then also getting progress against those activities to see if we're progressing as fast as we thought and whether it's costing us more. So lots of streamlining around all of that. We're going to start with resource planning, and just a bit of a refresher for those. So this is valid to all of the sort of practice management, commercial management deployments that we have. We have 3 ways of resource planning in UniPhi. They all come together into the overarching resource plan module, but some are at different levels of detail. So I'm just going to give a bit of a refresher on that. We go to the resource plan module. I'm just going to go into a project, and you'll see there's a resource plan sub-navigation. So I'm in the resources module, resource planning subnav. That's been there for a while. And what you'll see is the ability to resource plan at either a classification level or a person level. And you can capture both a baseline or an actual forecast. So timesheet data comes in dynamically, and then remaining forecast or budget, and you can compare both in this screen. So that's basically resource planning per project in your corporate commercial enterprise deployment, or by activity, because as I mentioned, these are set up as activities in a lot of bespoke project-specific deployments. These can be entered in as hours or as percentages. To do the percentage, you just need to have it per person, because classifications don't have standard hours, so there's no percentage there. So by changing this to people, we can then also just say percent allocation, and we can enter our estimates there. You can align them to the schedule in your timeline, and then when they move around, they all move around with it. We've also added in the ability to add people to the project team through this interface, which is a new UniPhi 18 feature. And you can minimize the list. You can see Annie Lennox doesn't have any hours, and if she was removed from the project or did some timesheet hours but didn't have any remaining, you can just clear the noise by turning on or off the show all resources icon. And then this chart is just showing you the green being timesheet hours, the blue resource baseline, and then red is the remaining. So that's one methodology. Now, all the hours will come into this screen, but if you wanted to go down to a level detail below that, you go to the contracts module, and there's a few things I wanted to show on this, so I'll just make sure I get it all. Just filter. I was filtering for internal costs there, so I've just changed that filter to revenue. And we have a revenue contract set up that has activities. And so these activities can be n levels. We've only got one, but you can actually drill in and create multiple. And people are assigned to that, and they have an effort profile on that. And then in the schedule screen, that effort profile, you can see how many actuals have come in and how many remaining. That can be phased out as well. This is being phased on a weekly algorithm, but if you change it to manual, you can manually do that. And again, you can use the percent to get that percent timeline. When you're doing that, you could do 100 activities, 1,000 activities. All of that is being summed up and will be displayed back in the resource plan screen. And the other thing to note, which both in this screen and in the resource plan screen, is that you can resource plan to the classification rather than the person. So if you don't know who's going to work on a project and you're planning for it, but you want to know how many engineers you need, or quantity surveyors or project managers, you can plan by classification and resource plan by that. And then the other thing that we've done as well is to set up a smoother initial data uptake, is to go to the portfolio view. I'll come back to the charts in a moment, but there's an import button there as well. So if you've got a portfolio pipeline in Excel, I think it's that one. Yeah. Again, similar to the project import, but a different format. You can, again, export the data from UniPhi and have it in this format, and then just pivot it back in, or copy it back in, update it in here and copy it back in if you wish. And so what I'm going to do here is so this is a pivot table, doesn't matter. I can still just copy out of it. I'll just do that much, doesn't really matter. And I go back into UniPhi, I click the import button, I click paste, it's hours. And you can see it's, because I've done this before, it's automatically picked up the mapping. And you'll see that this is more than one project. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 projects being imported here. Again, you get the validate button to test everything's fine, and you hit save, and that data then gets imported across the portfolio. So huge data uptake if you've done resource planning in other sources and you want to get that portfolio view. Again, extending that portfolio view, if I cancel that, you'll see in this screen, these are new dashboards from a portfolio perspective, and you can see the portfolio budget, actual and remaining hours in here as well, which is quite useful. This particular dashboard is interesting. If you've put standard hours against people's profiles, that's a daily standard hours, like 3.5 for part-time and 3.75 for 50% part-time and 7.5 for full-time. UniPhi will calculate how many hours are available in the month, and then your resource planning and actuals will come in against that, and you can see the capacity of that information. So that's a new piece of information on that. The contract system also has a schedule portfolio, and you can import into the contract schedule that I showed you before from here. But it's also equally a very interesting place to get a nice information on where you're tracking on particular projects and different contracts on them, but also a navigational structure to get access to directly into those screens. When you click on a contract from the dashboard, it takes you to the contract value screen. When you click on a link here, it takes you straight into the schedule screen so that you can start to maintain that schedule. And then click back up, it takes you back to the summary, and you can click to the next one, and so on and so forth. And so again, interfaces to improve workflows to make sure that we're reducing the number of clicks. The last forecast, the resource planning, is in the timesheets. It's not new. You can actually have people forecast their own work for the next week or two. And again, that will come into the resource plan view, but there's other reports in UniPhi that can show you who's working on what in the next week ahead, and reallocate that as needs fit. So a few different ways of tackling that resource planning capacity conundrum. And then once you do all of that, you can come into our dashboards. Again, another available out-of-the-box dashboard is our resource planning dashboard. And you can see here you've got people and classifications. They're interactive. If you wanted to see Director of Quantity Surveying, you can see we've got Howard Shaw a bit over allocated there. In this view, you can also drill in. So if you wanted to see what Samwise Gamgee was about to be over allocated on potentially, and what we need to look out for, you can drill in on that. And you'll see Samwise is working on Isengard Prison, terrible place, Maria Mines Extension, and the Mount Doom remediation works, which is a great one. And so, yeah, you've got that ability to drill in and drill out and see the detail of what's happening. Can't change the data from here, but it's giving you that transparency to then go and work on those pipelines. So you can get, I've just had a question with regards to embedded dashboards. There's a couple of options, 3 options actually. So we provide a service globally to embed the dashboards into the application when we're hosting for you. But if you're self-hosted, or if you have, if you're self-hosted, you can use your own Azure Power BI workspace and still have it embedded in the UniPhi application. Or you can actually point people to that workspace to access it directly in the Azure environment. So there's a few methods for you to share this information. The big problem with Power BI, if you just got desktop, is the same as Excel. How do you actually share and show that report? What UniPhi solved is you just publish it into UniPhi. There is also one element new within UniPhi 18 that I'll touch on that while we're talking about dashboards. And that is the ability to refresh this data yourself on demand. So previously, this product was on a scheduled basis, so you could have 8 refreshes per day. We still offer that, and that's a free service, but Microsoft have got quite a pricey version where you can just click this button and it'll pull all of the data into the Power BI dashboards. So that's something to consider. How often do you need this data to be refreshed? If you do need it on demand, you can get that available. We just need to, there is a price component to that. At the moment, we're charging our clients $500 per month, fixed price for as many refreshes as they like. But Microsoft are changing the cost profile on that product quite frequently, so that may change in the future. There's one other element within these dashboards worth working on, and in the Power BI embedded apps view, which only system administrators can see, but it's worth knowing even if you're not an admin person on the call, because you can ask them to consider it. When you click on this link, a couple of new things in UniPhi 18 is you can limit what license level can see those dashboards, and then you can also say limit it to a particular organization. So if you've built a customer dashboard and you want that customer to log in and see it, they would typically get a team member license. So it's only going to cost you $10 for that customer to log in per month. And then that you only want them to see their organization, you would select, for example, Birdcat Construction, and that particular workshop dashboard would only be visible to them. Just check the questions and take a breather. Okay. I think what someone just... Oops, missed a couple of people. Okay. There we are, 2 on my list. It's quite an extensive list today. Okay, so a few other little nitty-gritty things that have come out of the timesheet and resource planning view we're going to go through now. there's some cool invoicing stuff as well if you're into that. That's coming up in the next section. But around rates and tracking, so obviously when you establish a resource plan with hours, you then want to get the cost, which is
speaker. What do you say?
I'm just going
to pass it to the team if you want.
Can I pass?
Okay. And so, yeah, some of the things we've done around that. If I was to go to the resources section, this classification is used a lot. You saw it in the resource planning where I clicked on quantity survey and it limited the list. You've got charge and cost rates that you can set there, but equally you can see now in UniPhi 18, you can also set weekly hour limits and weekly hour limits. What that means is if someone books 45 hours to the job and the contract only allows you to invoice 40, if you type 40 in there, that will limit when we come to claim time, which you'll see in the invoicing, it'll limit it to that 40 hours. Another place that you can actually see this sort of stuff coming in is in the roles. So if I come into the roles, this is a completely configurable roles list, and you can see now you can actually allocate charge and cost rates to those roles, and they will come into contracts. So if someone is assigned to the PMO manager role and there is a cost and charge rate for that, that can come in as the default cost and charge rate for that person within the contracts module when establishing those contracts. Most of what this all does is just establish structure around the way that rates get set. There's another thing that's of interest around that with regards to resource planning and billing and calculating the number of hours in a week. You can actually configure now a calendar. I've completely forgotten where it is. Maybe one of my colleagues can chat to me about where that is, because I don't think I've done that yet. Where's the calendar? Oh, it's probably in financial years. There we go. So you can, in this calendar here, you can establish non-working days. Now that's going to be expanded quite frequently. This was just a short-term thing for specific projects, but we'll expand it to be able to enable site-based amendments to that. So, you know, Queensland holidays versus New South Wales versus New Zealand versus UK, wherever you're based, you'll be able to come in and set those holidays as specific to yours. And that will adjust the number of billable hours within a week to match contract regulations, but also in resource planning, extend the duration of resource plans when those public holidays are there. Okay. What else we got here? And a couple of other extra control elements have come into timesheets, which could be of interest to people on the call. Again, in the configuration module, in timesheets, you probably know about standard tasks, but they can now be closed off for billing. And so if you had a list of things, like the classic example that's being used there is people put in RFI, specific RFIs that they're timesheeting to if they're a design team, but there could be a whole range of reasons. You've got a task that you had people timesheet to for ages, but you no longer want them to, but you want the rest of the list to exist. You can just edit that and change the status from being open to closed, and it will mean you can no longer timesheet to that particular task. So that's an extra control around that. And the same is possible around contract deliverables and their status. So in the contracts module, you will have your own list of statuses, what that is, and you can now configure that to be timesheetable or not. Minimize that so I get the list. Oh, where is it? That one there. So you'll see here there's a can timesheet flag, and so basically if you've cancelled the contract deliverable, you can flag that as being don't allow timesheets to that task anymore. Simple little interfaces, but quite significant control around that. Okay, so now we're going to move into the commercial management side of the business and the changes we've made there. The first element I'm going to demonstrate is around program time and material invoices. So this is where you've got a program of works, people are timesheeting to it, You could have a combination of lump sum items and time and material that you want to bill for. I'm just going to filter for program management so I get a group of activities that I'm familiar with. And then what you're able to do is go into a sort of header project, if you like, called commercials or whatever. We'll just go into a project for now. Oh, not that one. Lost my project. There it is. And you'll see we've got this contract here called program invoicing. And you'll see that unlike other contracts, it's got a little plus there, which is actually adding projects to the contract. And so these are actually projects that have been added, not contract deliverables. If I click this icon, it'll say, here's all of the projects in this deployment. Which ones do you want to include in this contract for a time and material claim? And you can click those projects and then add them into this contract deliverable so that there's one contract. Even though you've been timesheeting to different projects or different activities across the portfolio, they all come into here. And then what happens is when you go to the invoice screen, it automatically calculates the time that has been booked to those activities and between the last claim date and this particular end date, which you can change. And therefore, if you do change, it does the calculation again and the values will change if there's more time. You can see that you can include lump sum in there. That 450,000 is a lump sum item and you can claim against that as well. And you're basically building up an invoice that you can then send to the client across thousands of activities where the calculation is done automatically for you. You can still do that just with normal contracts. So if I go back to our dashboards and go to my Twin Bridges project, I'll go into this work order ABC. So instead of having lots of projects in one contract, you might have a big WBS in the contract itself. We've got a project running now which has 4 levels of WBS and about 400 tasks. People are timesheeting to that vigorously. And then you come into the invoice screen, and if I scroll down the bottom, this is available to anyone invoicing time and material. What you'll see here is the 2nd of April is the last time we invoiced, so that the hours to date for this whole project have been claimed up to that point in time. And then the 27th is today. And so between that timeline, you have this many hours booked. And I just click this little hourglass here, and that automatically puts the hours next to the deliverables up here. You can see 29, 15, and 36 for the different people. That could be across 1,000 lines. Click one button, you've got your claim ready to go. What I'm going to do now is go into creating an invoice, because there's a couple of things around the document side that are changed there. But one of the ones I want to mention up front is when we sign this document off, it actually snapshots the time and material records against the invoice. So that if you roll back the timesheets and everything else, it's not going to, you're still going to be able to reconcile that between what you invoice. So if someone changes their timesheets for a duration of a time you've already claimed, you can present that to your client and say, we originally claimed 45 hours, but they got it wrong. And so now we're claiming 50 or less, depending on what you want. And then UniPhi presents condensed reports of that information, 2 lines, 5 lines across 1,000 timesheet lines to say, these are the things that have changed. And so that's a big UniPhi 18 change. And so when I click the create document icon, there's a couple of others that are changing in here. The first thing is you can see here that this template has been configured to enable me to actually change the text. You can still limit the depth as well, so then the change text disappears, but I could change that to say. And then the next thing you'll see is that I intentionally missed an account code for this lump sum item here. And so it's flagging that won't be able to be exported to the accounting system. Now, one of the other changes I'm going to show you in a moment for UniPhi 18 is you can actually enforce account code selection. I think there's a bit of a give and take there. It creates a UniPhi, a Unicry moment where the computer says no and people are just trying to create a work breakdown structure. But it does give better control for accountants to make sure that there's an account code to the task. So what before that was quite obtuse. When the little line came up, little caret, and you'd have a little caret there. And if you had 1,000 lines, it was almost impossible to find the missing account code. Now we kind of make it stick out with this nice juicy salmon color showing you where the error is. So there, the two things in that is the highlighted account code missing and the text change. It doesn't have to. You can control this in the template and say, no, I don't want my text changed in the document. I want control in the contract itself. It's up to you. I'm not sure that it'll let me go past until I fix that. So I'm just going to go back into the contract. This is the benefit of having multiple tabs open in a web browser. And I just need to get a code selected for that. And then I just come back in here and save the screen again. And now it's happy. No longer saying computer says no, and I can jump to the end because I just wanted to show you. Actually, it might not show. I haven't successfully got it to show here, but you can now configure the invoice to have outstanding invoices displayed in the invoice itself, a mini statement, if you like, on the second page, and you can have remittances output on the template as well. So it's worth having a look once you've upgraded to UniPhi 18. Go into the template designer and just have a look at the changes you can make and whether that satisfies things that you might want to have seen on your invoice for some time. And you can see the hello world has come into that. You can see that it's still showing the hours. If you wanted that to be eliminated, this has been around for a while, you just change this to be lump sum and it'll no longer put that information in brackets. When you say all, it's trying to show everything, whereas now it's just the text. So you can configure those invoices to really display what you want them to display and what you want to show the customer, and obviously run reports in UniPhi, extract to Excel to attaches further evidence of that particular claim. They're all in the reports module, additional reports modules around timesheet, program time and material, and comparison. And so by getting that to snapshot when we sign off that claim, you'll see now that there's on the right-hand side a last claim text. And so if any time gets rejected, often most companies will just have to create credit notes. But if that's not the case, if you can actually adjust the previously certified rather than the previously claimed, and then reclaim it again, we provide an interface for that. So you can come in here and say, well, actually, they only allowed 4 hours of Richard's time for whatever reason. And now the previously certified will be what gets put into the invoice. And when you re-invoice and you reclaim the extra hour, the reports will show that to the client and you'll try and convince them to pay the true time, or you can roll back the timesheet and reduce it to 4 hours, whichever way you think you need to act on that. But this interface here is proving very useful to those large commercial projects where they need to adjust the time that was actually ended up being approved by the customer. Another little detailed improvement back in the invoice is the ability, which, I mean, it's interesting that people have contracts where this happens because we had to build interfaces for them. You can actually now claim a disbursement as a derivative of the contract value. So this little linking icon here is a derivative icon. And when I click that, what it enables you to do is say, whatever the disbursement is, or the contract disbursements, and you're just saying, right, every month 3% of the original contract value is going to be claimed as a disbursement, and so it will automatically put that claim value in there for you as part of your invoice. That was a specific client request, a fascinating one, and there you go, it's there. Now, I mentioned there's a few configuration options around invoicing in UniPhi 18, and one of them was that code permissions. So there's lots of settings. If you go through all the different configuration, lots of settings icons have come in UniPhi 18, and you can see this one is mandatory account codes. And if I change that to yes, the computer is now going to say no to anyone who tries to save a contract where there's no account code selected. It's one of the ones that concerns me. I think more people will find that frustrating than beneficial, but we've had too many accountants say they need it because invoices weren't being exported. They were having to fix them up, etc. So that's there now for you to either turn on or off as you see fit. Now I'll stay on this screen briefly for another benefit. UniPhi now has the ability to snapshot a whole range of data at the month-end close automatically. So the idea behind this is that you use our Power BI dashboards and our other reports to present your information to management, you want that to be snapshotted. You want that to be fixed and not changed. So if someone wants to see what's changed from month to month or wants to know what was reported on in a particular time period, you can do that. It's contextual to the system, so you need to go into the various module configurations to set it. But if I set this to yes, what this means is that when we go into the financial period close interface, which I'll show you in a moment, has some new things for 18, and we close it, it actually takes a snapshot of all of the data in the contract phasing system. So that could be cash flow or effort, and takes a record of that with the month that you're closing. You can do that for resource planning as well. You can do that for revenue and cost. And so if you go into the chart of accounts, it'll have a settings icon, and you'll have snapshot forecast on financial period close. Go into the resources, it will have a settings icon, and you can see snapshot forecast on financial period close, yes. So you might set all of them to yes. You might only be wanting to snapshot a certain amount of things. It's up to you what you want to do. But what then happens, the implementation of that is, sorry, wrong screen. Go back into configuration again. You've got these financial periods. It's important for people to know that these financial periods are monthly as well as yearly. That's what happens when you click on the year. So if I click on 2022 or 2023, for example, because goodness gracious, that's what we're in. You'll see now the months come in for that financial year, configurable to whatever your financial year is. And then you'll see we've added 2 columns. It was only period closed in UniPhi 17. And the reporting closed is the one that then generates that snapshot. So you can actually close off people from creating invoices in a month by closing off, say, September. And that means people couldn't raise a progress claim or an invoice, and therefore it's kind of fixed. Run all of your accruals and everything else in your accounting systems and do your updated forecasts in UniPhi, get the reports happy, close the reporting period, and then snapshot all of that data just by clicking yes there. So by clicking yes there and hitting save, everything gets snapshotted. And the quickest way to demonstrate that is to go back to our resource planning dashboard. And you'll see in the plan versus capacity and in the resource plan graphs here, there's a compare to drop down. And you'll see that we've been playing around with this for a while. All of the different month-end snapshots are there. And so if I was to select June 2021, for example, I get this yellow line, and there's actually nothing. I think that one had some stuff. Nope. It did before. I've obviously selected a chart that didn't have any data in it. But yeah, so any data that was existing at that period of time would be displayed as a yellow bar there and would come in as a yellow bar in here as well. Now that's just one example. You can actually generate a whole host of comparisons and trend analysis in both out of the box reports and in the sample reports. You can see here that there's cash flow snapshots and budget versions. And if I was to open the resource planning one, resource plan snapshots, etc. And so they're all there for you to pull in and start to do trend comparisons over time of what's changed. All right, nearing the end now. Thank goodness. Contract management, there's some cool little changes I want to demonstrate there. Then I'm going to just go back to some other reports, reporting things that might be of interest, and then we'll close it off. Hope I haven't lost you all. Pretty dry. Feel free to keep asking the questions. Dry but good, I think. All right, this one's really cool. We've got some clients who are purchasing a lot of stuff. And so again, we work with all our clients and they all have different needs, and we work really hard to try and improve the system for them. And now it's just about spreading the word and seeing if it's applicable to others. One of the issues that when you're buying stuff rather than just delivering a service that people have is when the goods arrive. And we've developed with our client in hand a pretty cool process for that. And I'm just going to take you through it. And it's a new piece of functionality in UniPhi that may be of use for other purposes. I don't know. What we have in our template system is the ability to create as many templates as you like. And what this client has done is created a purchase requisition template that a person creates when they want to buy something. That then gets approved, becomes a purchase order. And then that then gets goods receipted using our mobile app or just the mobile version of UniPhi on the phone. photo gets taken and signed off. Now, that's all great, but what we really wanted to be able to do was to be able to present a list of all the things that people are buying and know what the status is in one screen. And so if I was to go to the contract screen now and just remove this filter, just go into one project. Get all of the statuses here. So you'll see that this stainless steel bench supply purchase is awaiting goods. So you can create this list to be whatever you want it to be in terms of statuses. The statuses are your names. And that would have been set when the purchase order was raised. It's still a commitment. So when you go to the cost module, it'll still show as a commitment to the cost, and the project's already recognized that cost. But the project manager on site might want to know, has it, or offsite even, has it arrived yet? And so they can then, install that bench when it's there. So how they would work through that is if they just click on this contract, or they could do it from the documents module, and they go to click a new document. One of the templates will be goods receipt. And then the first step of that goods receipt is, the second, where's it going? Oh, it happens automatically, I forgot. So the person selects, or it automatically selects if you created the contract, the purchase order that it relates to. They would take a photo of the goods receipt on their phone. That would come into this screen here, and the purchase order details gets generated dynamically because I've selected the contract up here. But the important thing is that when I sign this off, with a bit of luck, what's been configured in the template is that document drives the status. And so the status now should be, oops, on the dashboard. Yes, it is, goods receipted. And so just by doing that process and validating the goods receipt, I can come into this screen, and there might be 1,000 items purchased in this client. There list 100 anyway on a project, and just sort by these statuses using the filter here, and know at any point in time what's come in and what hasn't. Equally, you can shift this to dates and see when they're expected and when they did. And so this can also drive the commencement date, which is basically the date it arrives. So you can see when you're expecting things to come in and when they have come in, and the status of those. So instead of saying active there, that would be saying awaiting goods receipt, awaiting goods receipt down the screen. So it's not just goods receipts. You can use it to drive anything. The status has already been driven from automatically from pending to committed for contracts when they get signed off. This gives more granularity to the particular type of status that it gets moved to. What else have I got here? Oh, the other thing probably worth noting, which was a bit of a dumb thing that we had before, but now the customer is added to any of the descriptions on the page here, so that you always know who you're dealing with when you're in a contract. Again, when you've got 100 contracts, it's quite useful not having to rely just on the name. I know a lot of people actually put the customer's name as the contract, but we tend to encourage that to be kind of the service or the product, and then you will now see the customer or supplier, depending. So cost contract is the supplier, the revenue contract is the customer. It's being displayed there so that you know who it is you're dealing with. All right, so we're into reporting now, and just a couple of little things that I think are pretty cool additions. And I think I've gone into the wrong screen there. Yeah, okay. I'll start with custom fields for projects. So if we go to the project configuration, you can create as many custom fields in UniPhi as you like, and they can be a whole range of data types, lists, file uploads, images, text. And so you can see here we've got lots and lots of them. They can also be for just what describe the project, or they could describe progress on the project, and we call that financial period. So if it's a financial period custom field, you're updating it monthly. What's new in UniPhi 18 is these two columns here. The first one means that any data put to this particular custom field will display in the details screen of UniPhi, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So all of these functional units will now display dynamically. And the is public is now one of the challenges we had with Power BI is when you wanted to get images into the system and then you published those, different browsers had different security things around that. and they wouldn't display because it was behind the UniPhi's SSL certificate. So by saying that this is a public field and you upload a file into it, the idea is it's a file upload one where you're uploading. So ours is called test Power BI image. I'll just scroll down to where it's gone. And you'll see that this is flagged as yes under this is public. And so what that means is that when I upload an image into this field and then I call it into the Power BI report, it'll actually be able to be seen when it's published out, embedded into UniPhi. So that's another UniPhi 18 feature, pretty important one, a bit technical, but important to be aware of. Because lots of people want to do project profiles where they have an image of the project. So to see this in use, we've got all these yeses here now. What I'm going to do is just go to the summary screen and click on that project. And if you're not an administrator or a program manager on that project, your default landing page is actually the details screen. And you'll see as I scroll down different dashboards, but also you'll see building functional units, number of lists, number of car parking spaces. They're all custom fields that you've decided you want to display in this particular screen. And so you can lay out this details page to have as much information to your end users as you like, including, as you'll see here, roles. And so that is set not as custom fields, but in the roles screen, you'll see the same flag using details screen, and you can set yes there. So whatever roles, key roles you want people to know about, you can set so that they appear on the details page of a project. So hopefully providing more and more useful information for people to know what these projects are about and you know how they're performing. Just to extend that UniPhi image issue one stage further, in the custom fields screen, the other thing in UniPhi 18 is this used to be called periodic custom fields, which is a little bit of a dorky term, so we just called it monthly updates. It's the custom fields where you go in and you put in commentary or safety stats, or we had a wildlife pitch that we were capturing how many cat baits we'd laid in heritage listed forests. In the custom fields here, if I scroll to the bottom of this screen, these are all crazy custom fields we created for different groups. You'll see that there's an image uploaded, which is the image that's come through into here. So that's what you can do. And if I just remove it, I can upload a different one. And then I can save that. And that basically enables it to then flow through into that report. I have to obviously refresh the data, so I can just come into that project custom fields and hit refresh data. And we should have a far more attractive building. Yeah. So if I publish that, this is the bit that wasn't working on all browsers. So this is how you can then publish this into, this is how we publish it into the system. We're going to replace the existing report. And if I come back in here, once it's finished, I shouldn't be too quick. Now, if you had the refresh on demand feature, you could have just refreshed the report and it would have come in. Because this is dummy data, it's a bit tenuous to refresh this entire data set. Not something I want to do. So I had to do a little workaround. But if I come to the sample reports, you can see again, we're getting that image is flowing through there. And if I hit refresh here, if I changed it, it would then update again. Okay. One of the other useful features in UniPhi 18, so we've got 4 reporting platforms, right? We've got the Power BI embedded dashboards. We've got the other embedded dashboards, like the resource planning dashboard that I showed you. That's a Fusion Charts dashboard embedded in the system to help. You've got documents that you can create reports from. For example, down here, we've got a PCG report that outputs a whole bunch of information on a project. And we have our reporting services reports. Reporting services is a technology from Microsoft that we use, and that's under the reporting tab. And these can now, they've always been able to export to Excel and CSV, but you can also export them to PowerPoint. And there's an out-of-the-box report called Project Status Portfolio that it was actually designed for. And if I just, so the formats are listed here. You can see there's now PowerPoint, but before I go to PowerPoint, I'll just leave it as HTML. I'll just click View. And you can see that there's 18 pages to this report, and every page is a different project. And so Hangers Lane concept design, and then clicking the little arrow, initial status report, initiation status report, sorry, build that shed over there, status report. And so what you can do is just pop that out to PowerPoint, and you can have your own sort of style into this, and click that, and it'll run along. And each of these reports then becomes a slide in the PowerPoint file. Now, we will be adding export to PowerPoint in the PDF as well, but there is some cool Excel exports in the Power BI, which I'll show you in a moment. But yeah, this Hangers Lane, and then you just click through the different slides, and you're getting the various data sets from UniPhi dynamically populated, so people aren't having to go through and manually copy and paste information to generate a status report. The text in the summary comes from those monthly updates controls if they were actually inputted in. And so, yeah, that's there in UniPhi 18 as well. And that did remind me of something that you can do in Power BI as well, which isn't an 18 feature, but they have enhanced it in the last 12 months quite considerably. You've got these options now to export the data. And my favorite is the summarized data option. It really gives you the underlying information that you would tend to need if you needed to get it into Excel and do something with. And so I'll just wait for that to load. And that's going to more or less configure and complete the UniPhi 18 webinar. So that's all the underlying data that's come from that particular dashboard. Were there any other questions, comments on any of that? Thank you for hanging in there. Hopefully you are still there and I'm not talking to the void. It is a lot to take on. That recording will be published so that you can review it in slower detail. And obviously we'll be sending out some blog entries about some of the more specific or higher level improvements. And yeah, get in contact to get your system upgraded. Okay. Well, I've gone over time by a minute, which is unusual for me, so I'll let it go. Thanks for dialing in. Thanks, Dustin, and everyone else. Matthew. Good luck.